Hello, Jonathan. Can you hear me?
I can indeed. You can hear me okay?
Yes, all okay, Jonathan. Go ahead. The stage is yours. Thanks, Jonathan.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. I'll just share my screen. 2 moments. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. So today's webinar is on the Autodesk Construction Cloud and ISO 19650 workflows and features that have recently been added to the Autodesk Construction Cloud. So what I'm going to demonstrate today on behalf of the Diatech group, which includes CCAD as well, or incorporating CCAD as well. And Diatech and CCAD have offices across Dublin, Cork and Galway, and are a Gold Partner Autodesk reseller, and also provide training and consultancy around IT, BIM processes, BIM workflows as well. So please get in contact with the guys in Diatech via their website, or via contacting by phone as well. So today is, I suppose, it's a general webinar, I suppose, being delivered to a number of different types of companies in the industry. But if you feel like you've seen something today after I present, if you want to book a one-to-one demo specifically for your company, either with myself or with one of our other technical colleagues in Diatech or CCAD, please just drop an email to autodesk@diatech.ie, or again through your account manager or contacts within Diatech or CCAD as well. So my name is Jonathan Reinhardt. I've presented quite a number of times on behalf of the Diatech Group and CCAD, and my background is as a Chartered Architectural Technologist. I completed the BIM Masters in TUD back in 2017, worked as a BIM manager and worked extensively as an architectural technologist since about 2005. Was my first architecture job when I was in second year of college, and kind of been working pretty much ever since, either in Ireland or in Australia as well for a number of years. So just to give you a bit of context about the point of view that I'll be coming from today. So again, as I said, feel free to get in touch if you prefer to have a one-to-one demo. After this webinar, we can book that in a couple of weeks' time or whenever suits yourself. So please feel free. As I mentioned, I won't go through it again. That's just a brief background of myself again, just to let you know, I suppose, the context that I'm coming from. I have used a lot of Autodesk software where I've managed BIM projects and worked extensively using Revit, Navisworks, BIM 360, and more so. I suppose I've only become familiar with Autodesk Construction Cloud in the last number of months because it was only released recently, so I've been getting to grips with that. I'm very excited to show you some of the new features that they've added in relation to ISO 19650 compliance as well. I did run a previous webinar back in May on Bim Collaborate Pro. So you will notice that I actually won't go into detail about Bim Collaborate Pro today, because we did cover that in a previous webinar, but I will mention it a number of times just to make you aware of what actually exists in the Autodesk Construction Cloud. And I hope to kind of help you understand how that new package works, because I appreciate Autodesk, released BIM 360 next generation back in 2018, I believe. And now Autodesk Construction Cloud is also exists in addition to BIM 360. So I appreciate that can be slightly confusing. So hopefully I'll be able to help you understand that today, or explain some other features that maybe you're not aware of as well. So I suppose the goal of today is to give you an overview of the Autodesk Construction Cloud itself. I'll then go into kind of understanding what a CDE is from an ISO 19650 perspective. So I'm assuming most of you are familiar with ISO 19650, and just to give you a snippet for those of you that are not, ISO 19650 is the international standard for the sharing of information on BIM projects and civil engineering and infrastructure projects. So it's a standard to share information essentially, and that came out of the UK BIM mandate back in a number of years ago, 2015 or 2016. The UK BIM mandate, and the old document was the PAS 1192, and that was also known as I suppose a BIM level 2 project. And now we have a BIM level framework which uses an ISO 19650 international standard produced by BSI. And then I will show you some of the ISO 19650 workflows. If I have time at the end, I will actually jump into the Construction Cloud just to kind of show you around the user interface, maybe how to create folders and how to place files in there, just showing you some of the features and controlling permissions and that type of thing as well. So to understand, I suppose, the Autodesk Construction Cloud, what this now includes are a couple of different products or different subscriptions that if you're looking to purchase, or if you have purchased, what they entail are, we've got separate kind of 4 or 5 separate ones. So one of them is Autodesk Bim Collaborate. So this includes design collaboration and model coordination. We also have then Bim Collaborate Pro. So what Pro includes is the Revit Cloud work sharing, collaboration for Civil 3D, and collaboration for Plant 3D. So that they are 2 separate purchases. And obviously the Pro version is, you don't need basic Bim Collaborate to have Bim Collaborate Pro. It's one or the other. Then we also have Autodesk Takeoff, which is 2D and 3D takeoff software for quantity surveyors and estimators. So that all resides within that cloud environment. And I suppose the benefit of it all sitting in the cloud environment is that you're able to access files that are saved maybe in Autodesk docs, or maybe a Revit file, an Autocad file, Civil 3D file, even Word files, Excel files, and lots of different formats from non-Autodesk software as well. So it's not only Autodesk formats that Autodesk Construction Cloud support. Then we also have Autodesk Build, which is kind of site and project management software for contractors, subcontractors, for guys working on site or companies working on site. And this includes the Build module, which allows you to create things like safety checklists on site using iPads and mobile devices. And then it's also got a cost module as well for tracking costs and cost changes on site as well, and change requests also. So across all of those, where all of the files actually reside is within something called Autodesk Docs. So whichever subscription you do purchase, or if you purchase them all, whether it's Collaborate, Takeoff, or Build, Autodesk Docs comes as part of all of those subscriptions. So if you're familiar with the old BIM 360 next generation, it's quite similar. There's certain improvements, I suppose, that has caused this to be released as a new unified platform. So just to keep that in mind. So included with all those subscriptions is you get centralized administration. So that's permission controls, allowing certain people to have certain folder access. And within those folders, by the way, you can save 3D models, Revit files, CAD files, as well as PDFs, and as I mentioned, Word, Excel, and doc type files, or Microsoft Office type files as well, and lots of other features. And then you're able to produce certain types of reports as well. And Construction IQ is also something else there too. So the Autodesk Construction Cloud, just to kind of put it in, Build is separate to Bim Collaborate and Autodesk Takeoff. And within that, we have Autodesk Docs, and we've got something called Insight and Administration as well. So just to understand what's in Build on its own. So that just allows you to connect your different teams that maybe somebody, an architect or a design firm, is saving their files into Bim Collaborate Pro, but then your contractor on site perhaps could be using Autodesk Build to produce checklists, and they'll retrieve that file from Autodesk Docs that has been shared, ideally through an ISO 19650 process. You don't have to follow an ISO process if your project or client or building owner hasn't specified it. So it is quite flexible to work with an ISO project and without an ISO requirement as well. So it's quite dynamic and flexible as well, to keep that in mind. So some of the features within, I suppose, looking at the build module as part of Autodesk Construction Cloud, this allows you to do things that we could also do in BIM 360, such as controlling documents, the automatic versioning of a file, the document approvals by creating approval workflows, for example. So this ensures that the right information is in the right hands and keeping project teams in sync all together. So you're able to control the various different permissions. So let's say, for example, you only want a certain design team to have access to certain design folders. You may only want the interior designer to have access to the interior design folder, landscape architect and architect, or even subcontractors to only have access to certain folders as well. So you can control all of that. So your information, that reduces, I suppose, the room for human error when you're able to control those type of permissions as well. And you can customize different sharing options, setting the different permission levels as well. If you give them access, then you can again set different levels of access that they can use in that folder. So can they only view a file? Can they create and view a file? Can they edit a file? And can they completely manage it? So can they delete files is a separate permission. So you can stop people from deleting files, which is a huge thing when you want to give people access to certain files, and obviously make sure that the file stays in place and secure. And you can completely customize your folder structure, by the way, to your ISO 19650 standard, or to your own company process. If you're not using the ISO specified folder structure, for example, you can create your own folders. I like to create them for an ISO compliant project, even if it's not an ISO project. So I divide up my folders by discipline. So I have an architecture folder, structural folder, civils, landscape, interiors, and so on and so forth. And that just allows you or else the administrator of your Autodesk Construction Cloud to manage those folders in, I suppose, in a more fluid way, in my opinion. And then document versioning, we saw this in BIM 360. So this feature is also in the Autodesk Construction Cloud, and just allowing you to instantly share, I suppose, the latest drawings. You know which version you're working with. For example, after the file name, it will actually show which version. But as well as showing you the latest version, you're able to compare previous versions, which again you could do in BIM 360, and a very powerful feature in my opinion as well. And in this example, you can actually see a screenshot of what's in red was a previous version, a later version issued on October 16th. And the previous version is everything highlighted in blue, and they're the items that have actually changed from the previous version of what's been added or what's been removed. And in this case, you can see it's a couple of internal walls and doors, and then some room tags have also been moved as well from the previous version 6 weeks previously. So that's just highlighting you in a visual way that something has changed in the drawing. And this works on 2D drawings. It works on PDFs. It will work on just sheets that you upload from Revit. It will work on DWG drawings, and it will work on Revit files as well. So in a 3D view, you can visually see what walls have moved from previous versions too. We also have document approvals. So this document approvals module feature sits within the docs module. So you're able to create something called approval workflows. And again, this is almost identical to what was in the BIM 360 version of this approval workflow feature. and that's not to confuse things. You will see extensive similarities between BIM 360 and Autodesk Construction Cloud. It's almost identical, in fact, except the user interface is in my opinion, just a bit more user-friendly, and there's lots more features in there, such as the ISO naming standard feature as well. So that allows you to customize and automate the review and distribution of project drawings. So if you're sharing a set of PDF files, issuing a set of PDF files to a client, to a subcontractor, to another designer, you can assign that to go through an approval workflow, so that set of files is attached to a quality checking process. So somebody has to actually approve that set of files before it moves on to the next individual or onto the next company. So it could be a case of maybe the drafter within the architect's office wants to submit a set of drawings to perhaps to the client, but between the client and maybe the draft person, you want it to go through a senior designer or an architect, and you can set that draft person or technician can in fact upload those files. They can start a review, and it will automatically be sent a notification to that senior architect. They'll receive an email, and then they'll be able to then log into their Autodesk Construction Cloud, check that set of files, check the design is compliant with what was specified by the client, what's in the client brief, comparing it maybe to other room data sheets that have certain specific or specification in relation to floor finishes, types of furniture and stuff like that. And then if the architect or senior designer approves that, it can then get issued to the client, or it can get copied into another shared folder or published folder if you're coming from an ISO perspective as well. So it's a good way of keeping, I suppose, quality checking and quality assurance within that as well. So within the build module within Autodesk Construction Cloud, you can configure things like RFIs to streamline, I suppose, RFI workflows. It works similar to approval workflows, but it's specifically made for requests for information, and it just has a slightly different format of how that works, and that sits in the build module rather than the docs module. So just to keep that in mind, it allows you to connect your project management as well as cost management by linking certain PCOs from an RFI as well. Or you can even compile, I suppose, a robust audit trail, as it says, with the RFI activity log. So it means that you can check if something has been approved that you feel maybe shouldn't have been approved. There is an audit trail back there as well to see who approved it, what date and what time it was approved, and that kind of thing as well, who it was assigned to, and maybe who else checked it as well. But it just means that, I suppose, people are more conscious of what they're sharing then as a result of that quality checking being in there as well. And the RFIs move the file along from person to person the same way that an approval workflow would as well. We've also got things like submittals for technical submittals. Again, similar to RFIs and approval workflows, works in a very similar way, but I suppose submittals is it's a separate tab within Build. So you're able to discern then, you can see on the left-hand side, you've got your various different features. You've got RFI submittals. So you're able to discern between what's an RFI, what's a submittal as well, and separate to all your other documents too. So that could be submittal for technical submittal for specification of I suppose a selected, fire dampener or air handling unit or wall finish or whatever, and that can be sent as a technical submittal to be approved by the architect or by the fire engineer or the structural engineer, etc., from either the subcontractor or the main contractor as well. So within the cost module, you also have access to budget creation and contracts administration. So this allows you to create or import, I suppose, budgets and leverage budget templates. You can create contracts with flexibility, and this is, I suppose, needed in multiple or main or your prime contracts as well. And then you customize the budget view with custom calculated columns as well. So I suppose I'm not familiar with maybe the quantity surveying and the cost management side of a project. My background's architecture, but I can appreciate the benefit of this to you guys maybe from an estimating or a cost management point of view on site as well. So just to keep that in mind. Then I suppose looking at quality planning within the build module as well, you're able to create something called forms. So forms, I suppose, allow you to create checklists from templates and then manage those checklists. So again, you can create a checklist. It's not just a sheet of paper on site. It's not just a PDF document printed out or on an iPad. The checklist actually resides in Autodesk Construction Cloud as an intelligent form. So it gets moved from within the Autodesk Construction Cloud, and then somebody on site, you know, whether it's the BCAR inspection or maybe it's the structural engineering doing their inspections, they can use this checklist to create, I suppose, quality assurance on site, making sure that particular items or tasks have been executed as specified. Even from a safety point of view as well, having your safety officer you go around the site and check that, you know, particular safety issues have been addressed or should be addressed, and then assigning that in a checklist to maybe the site manager or the foreman on site to address that particular safety issue. You can also capture photographs as well. So that can be done on a mobile device or on an iPad or a tablet type device as well. And you can also assign that if a checklist is non-conforming, so if it fails, or if somebody says, no, this does not comply, there's an automatic issue creation as a result of that. And then you could actually assign that again to the respective person. But the auto creation of that, I suppose, is quite important because it's again, reducing that room for human error on site. So that's kind of looking at an overview of initially at Autodesk Construction Cloud, the different offerings in there. So I'm just going to go into a bit more detail of, you know, what is a CDE, and I appreciate some or most of you probably know what a common data environment is. But what I want to do is just, I suppose, set the context of where the Autodesk Construction Cloud ISO feature fits into what is specified within the ISO 19650 document. So some of you may be familiar with this definition. So a common data environment, or CDE, is the single source of information used to collect, manage, disseminate documentation, or the graphical model and non-graphical data for the whole project team. So that's taken from the ISO document itself. So Autodesk Docs or BIM 360 Docs perform as this single source of information. Then collecting, managing, and disseminating or sharing information. So within BIM 360 and Autodesk Construction Cloud, it's, you know, tightly controlled processes, such as using approval workflows or setting permission levels are what achieves this particular feature. And then the graphical model and non-graphical data, so documents, sheets, models, Word documents, Excel files, PDFs, all of that kind of information as well is all possible in the Autodesk Construction Cloud. And then the whole project team, main contractor, general contractor, subs, architects, and everybody else that works across, I suppose, at the design stage, as well as that building stage as well, or the site stage when it's actually being implemented and constructed on site as well. So the benefits of using a common data environment. Some of you may be using alternative common data environments. Autodesk Construction Cloud, I think that the wave of features in it, it definitely ticks a lot of boxes in my opinions. In my opinion, of using a lot of other, I suppose, other ways to share and store files, whether that's email or whether it's in some other cloud storage tool. Autodesk Construction Cloud is built specifically for the construction industry, you know, both for design and both for site stage. So I suppose it's quite time efficient, benefits to it in terms of sharing files and saving files and managing all of that. Improved quality by things like using approval workflows to manage that QA, QC process, as well as RFIs and quality checklists on site as well. Enhanced collaboration, if you're using something like Bim Collaborate Pro, even working from inside Revit, being able to save your files, collaborate with your files into Autodesk Construction Cloud as well. So that is your single source of truth, we'll say, and that's going to reduce your risk on a project as well. If you're a contractor or if you're a designer signing off on compliance or BCAR point of view, you know, using CDE that is specifically made for construction projects, it is massively going to reduce your risk there as well. So the way I suppose we used to look at a simplified way of collaboration is information, how it's typically exchanged on a project. So we know many of you are probably working in this way today. You know, people are working either independently or in their own silos, and then information could be shared on an internal network with themselves, or then by email or other sort of cloud storage solutions as well. So lots of different people involved in the process, and that can be quite fragmented and you know, as a source of truth. And I've experienced this myself working in practice, you know, sharing files by email. And then if somebody else needs to share a file by email, you don't actually know if that's the latest file that the client has or that the other structural engineer might have. Are they working from the latest architectural drawings that have been emailed to them? And that can always lead to confusion. And if that confusion then makes it to site with the wrong version of a drawing, you know, I can expect many of you have seen that happen. I've seen it happen, and nobody wants it to happen. So using something that manages, I suppose, those kind of minor transitions of files in a I suppose, an automated way is definitely beneficial to a project. So using either Autodesk Docs or BIM 360 Docs within Autodesk Construction Cloud, I suppose it puts everything in the center, and everybody is then pulling or pushing information to this one central location. So it makes perfect sense to me anyway, whether it's design team or the owner or quantity surveyors or project managers as well. So I suppose, what is ISO 19650? Aren't BIM 360 Docs and Autodesk Docs already CDEs? So I suppose, yeah, as we know, the context 10 years ago, to the UK government published their construction strategy, and this then fed into what became PAS 1192, BIM level 2, and what is now ISO 19650 as part of a BIM level framework project. I won't go into that in too much detail. I'll assume you know what it is. But just to keep in mind that BIM mandates and BIM adoption is growing globally. We've seen this across every region in the world, and every country, I suppose, as well. So what is ISO 19650? It's a global standard for managing building information modeling over a project lifecycle. So the first international standard for BIM level 2 compliance, led by BSI or British Standards Institute. So the ISO 19650 document, either your company may have access to it already. It is purchasable from BSI website, just to keep that in mind. And I'm not sure of the cost, but you do need to purchase it if you don't have access to it. So it's made up of part 1 and part 2. Part 1 is kind of concepts and principles of what sharing information should cover. And then part 2 is the delivery phase of the asset. So that's getting the design information from the architect, getting that up to I suppose a shareable point that it can be transitioned then to the contractor to start executing it on site. They can start setting out foundations, excavating, fill on site if they need to as well, and getting that information right from that design phase into the hands of the contractor as well. So why is it relevant? The ISO standard calls for project data to be stored and managed in a certain way. And I suppose as a result, project teams are now looking for an ISO compliant CDE to store and manage their project data. So information flows principally in this type of way, from work in progress into a shared area, then into a published area, into an archived area, which is kind of kept separate. But this can also be a separate folder. So you can take it that these are 4 separate folders that exist in your BIM 360 project. These exist in your BIM 360 project, and again, you can set permissions based on this. So this diagram is actually taken from the ISO 19650 document. It's in I think it's the part 1 it resides in, but principally it just sets out you need a work in progress area. So that's where everybody works on their own model, their own design file, and only each design discipline has access to their own work in progress folder. Then when they want to share information into the shared area, everybody should have access to the shared area. So any file that makes it into the shared area, whether it's a PDF or a 3D model, that should have gone through something called an approval workflow. And then by the time it makes it to the published area, the information that's going to be used for site, again, that will have gone through a review and an authorization process as well. Again, all possible within the Autodesk Construction Cloud to manage that from an ISO perspective as well. So some of the controls that we use within an ISO project, we've got information container identification. So that's the name of your file. So if you're using the BS 1192 naming standard, that's your container class identification. We then have classification, whether that's your Uniclass classification or whatever has been specified on your project. Suitability status. We've then got revision codes, transition of containers. So a container is a file. That's just the terminology that's used in the ISO document. When you see the term container, it actually means a file, and a container is a set of information, something that contains lots of information. So a file is that. So transition then is the moving of containers. So the moving of files. So when a file gets moved, it should go through a quality approval workflow or a quality checking workflow, purely so mistakes don't make it to site, or reduced number of mistakes will make it to site as a result of this type of managed type of workflow. And within the Autodesk Construction Cloud, what we use are approval workflows within there as well, which again I talked about briefly at the start. So why Autodesk built the Autodesk Construction Cloud? So just some scenarios, I suppose, at a business level, before using the ISO 19650 features within the Autodesk Construction Cloud, I suppose there was a lack of consistency and standardization. When the broken down lines of communication, you have various different multiple technology solutions, and this is all based on survey data from the industry, by the way. And then I suppose at a user level, inconsistent, disconnected processes, like I discussed, by sharing files by email, or sharing files by another, I suppose a non-construction related storage cloud solution is inconsistent in technologies. If it doesn't speak to the software that it's coming from, that can be an issue, and I've seen that myself as well. And then at a user level, you can't find what you need when you need it. We've all been there looking for the latest file. Have I got the most up-to-date architectural or structural drawing to work from to make my design coordinate with as well? And then obviously this has negative consequences, reworking, misinformation going around, different versions, same documentation, as I said already. I suppose reducing win rate if you're losing out on future work. Nobody wants that to happen. And then large technology spending as well, and siloed separate information. So that's at a business level. So if you're a business owner or operator or at that kind of level, they're the type of, I suppose, negative consequences you'll see from maybe having disconnected workflows. Then at a user level, they can learn and adopt multiple solutions. And this is prone to human error. And you know yourself, if you're jumping from one software to another software, you know, it's slightly different format or different usability, and that's taking up brain power. And at the end of the day, it just tires you out really, and nobody wants that. We want to be working as efficiently, and you know, we all want to be happy in what we're doing as well at that kind of level too. And then you've large amounts of time spent manually checking documentation, and you know, worrying about whether I had the right information. And obviously in a company, this can affect, I suppose, company morale as well. So after implementing something like Autodesk Construction Cloud, it gives you access to document metadata at a business level, I suppose better consistency, standardization of process, accurate document status information. Again, that single source of truth. And then at a user level, you're doing more with fewer tools essentially. And then I suppose alignment, transparency of project documents between all of your key stakeholders, and more seamless design data integrations as well, and automating certain types of workflows within your construction cloud. And then what are we looking at with I suppose positive business outcomes, most up-to-date information, winning more work, reduced rework on site or even at the design office as well. Nobody wants to be spending time doing rework, losing hours or days doing that. It's not good for anybody to enjoy their job if they're just working on rework. Reduce training costs as well, because you've less software to work with. You're not using lots of different softwares to train and learn people on. Then at the user level, more control over your process, increased job satisfaction. I can definitely contest to the increased job satisfaction from my experience. Reduced transitioning between applications. So for example, from AutoCAD to Docs, you're only transitioning files within that kind of environment, or from Revit to Docs, or Revit via Bim Collaborate Pro as well. You're less worrying about if you got something right, because you can rely that certain easy tasks have been automated, such as the auto versioning, for example, and then more time can be spent on value-adding activities for your own job, and I suppose for your own tasks or your own business as well. And then data then seamlessly transitions then from that design to construction phase, because it's all in that single source of truth that we spoke about as well. And I suppose who is this for? It's for owners of projects as well. Whether that's a building owner, hotel owner, property developer, or if it's Department of Education or a government project as well. An owner that wants to maximize return on investment on all their projects. So they need everything to be under control and progressing according to the plan. And then obviously for project managers, as part of owners, companies, property developers as well, they need access to the latest project information as well. I suppose some of their pain points that have been surveyed, such as lack of consistency, and similar to what I just spoke about. I won't go into this in detail. I don't want to lose you too much before I get into the features. But a lot of those pain points are experienced, such as can't finding what you need. We've all experienced that again. Manual processes for approval workflows as well. Who has checked this? How do you manage that? If it's only being done via email or via maybe a PDF printed out checklist as well. How do you manage that? And I suppose how Autodesk Construction Cloud helps this. It helps you enforce a naming standard of files. It gives you a template and naming standard builder, also a validator to check files as well. It gives you a holding area to keep files until they've been approved or been checked. Create different metadata for a file, so adding custom properties such as the revision code or the status code or your suitability code, and then approval review workflows as well. And then for the main contractors, you're going to have similar concerns if you're a main contractor as well, such as the lack of consistency and standardization, and back to auto versioning and stuff like that as well. So you'll always know that you're working with the latest version. And again, in a similar way, main contractors benefit in a similar way from that naming standard enforcement, and being able to access and search files in that Autodesk Construction Cloud. And then architecture and engineering firms, designers under pressure maybe to deliver high quality work on current projects and keep a strong pipeline of future work coming. And then BIM manager, I suppose, responsible for training staff on standards and sharing documentation based on project milestones. Again, going to have similar pain points to the building owner, the property developer, and the project management team and contractors as well. Broken lines of communication, some of the pain points, and this is using, I suppose, disconnected workflows without Autodesk Construction Cloud. And then how Autodesk Construction Cloud helps this is Autodesk design authoring integrations, works with Revit, Civil 3D, Autocad, and stores lots of different file formats in there as well. And again, naming standard enforcement, and the desktop connector as well. And I'll show you some screenshots of the desktop connector and how that works with enforcing that naming standards. So what workflows do BIM 360 Docs and Autodesk Docs support? So what it supports, what we have here, if you see the naming standard overview page in Autodesk Docs. So we've got, for Autodesk Docs, we've got project admins, so they can click on the settings in the files tool, and then the naming standard to get the naming standard builder. So this is the new naming enforcement for ISO 19650 projects. It's highly customizable, I will say that. So even if you're using if you're not using the BS 1192 or ISO 19650, you can customize this to suit your own naming standard. Perhaps you have some other type of defined standard. You can customize it, so it's quite customizable. So for BIM 360 Docs, project admins can navigate and do similar with the admin module, select services, click on document management and then naming standards tab as well. So it does work on docs and BIM 360 docs. So Autodesk docs and BIM 360 docs, just to discern between those two. So the preview of the naming standard will update, and if changes are made to the naming convention or related attributes, then on this page, project admins can choose to customize the naming standard, enforce the naming standard on folders and subfolders, and enable or disable the holding area. And I suppose one of the interesting things about this naming standard, once you apply it on a project, it can only be applied to folders that are empty. So you want to do it at the very start of your project. If you've already files in there, it won't be applied to those folders. And I suppose that just keeps the consistency to make sure that it's done from the very outset of the project as well. And then the naming standard builder editor. So what we can do in here is, I suppose, the naming standard cannot be edited once. As I said, there are files in the folder that are or will be enforced. After choosing to customize the naming standard, project admins can then reorder, remove, or add naming convention attributes if they want. Project admins can customize the type, the text field drop-down list, or date as well that you can select from, whether that's your project code or your company code or your project number. So that's alphanumeric text or number options. Range length, fixed length, or no requirements can be set to as well in there. And then you can even set the delimiter if it's a hyphen. So essentially what appears between the complete name. So is it a dash, is it an underscore as well, or is it a point, for example? And project admins can also choose to add, remove, or customize related attributes. So just to keep in mind that project admin is a set permission. Not everyone is a project admin, which obviously only gives certain people access to control these naming conventions in the back end of the dashboard within Autodesk Construction Cloud as well, which obviously again means people can't just go in and change things without maybe the BIM manager or the main BIM lead on a project managing that as well. So when you're uploading files to a naming standard enforced folder, users will see the validator. If some file names do not conform, users can edit names individually or with a bulk edit as well. So if you've lots of different files, you can edit those files, and users can add or remove the files. And if users finish validating all the files in the upload group, they will be able to upload the files to the destination folder once they've gone through that process. And if there are files in the upload group that the user has not finished validating, they can upload those files to the holding area and then finish validating later. So let's say it's hit 5:30, you want to go home on a Friday or whatever, you can just put those files into your holding area there as well. So you know what has been validated and what hasn't. So very powerful for quality checking. So if we just look at those ISO requirements again and the docs features, so the doc manager needs to ensure compliance with the standard naming convention, and there we have the docs feature is that standard naming convention tool that we looked at, correcting status and revision data. So you've got project level attribute management in docs that meet that, and then doc manager needs to automate the review of the process. So we've got again those approval workflows and capabilities, and then the doc manager needs to verify that all the files in the CDE have a unique ID. So improved document log reporting and enhanced search is a capability in Autodesk Construction Cloud. So I suppose the connected ecosystem or the benefits of it: connected workflows throughout the entire construction life cycle. This gives you access to or connection to Autodesk Construction Cloud, connected workflows, connecting design to construction, and then connection to how data is created in Autocad, Revit, and Civil 3D as well. So looking at all of those type of workflows. So here we have the Autocad validator. So we can just see a preview example of this. It will then, this is just a quick video. I hope it's playing for you guys. You can then set the naming standard in that, and then choose to upload those sheets from Autocad as well. So it's not only Revit that it works with. And then if something is incorrect, you can then check that as well. And it will give you a little warning on that respect too. So in AutoCAD, desktop users can click push to Autodesk Docs, And this will send the files to BIM 360 or to Autodesk Construction Cloud platform projects. And in selecting a destination folder with a naming standard, the validator will pop up, ensuring users can rename sheets before upload. And then after upload, users can click the view and destination folder on their browser as well. And then with the Revit integration, what this allows you to do, it will actually, when you're saving a Revit cloud model and selecting the particular folder with the naming standard enforcement, an error will pop up if the name does not conform to the naming standard on that project as well. So users will be directed to check the naming convention and rename the model then. So they're given an error if the naming convention doesn't match. And this is only available on the first save of a Revit cloud model. So making sure that your initiated model is shared in that respect as well. So the desktop connector. So when saving a file into desktop connector and selecting a destination folder with naming, an error will pop up if it doesn't conform to the naming standard. So there you get a message in the bottom telling you that does not conform to that particular naming standard as well. So what do customers think of this? First impressions, very satisfied, customizable of the file naming convention, and they are uploaded. This person found it very good that documents are checked directly when they're uploaded, and that non-compliant documents are then gone into the holding area and can be renamed from there as well. So it's very powerful. And then obviously connecting it, the importance of this brings together and document management together mix in the ISO 19650 standard for uniformities in this CDE. Then you have a very powerful platform to bring design to life and realization and build the most challenging buildings that your clients want. So just to recap on what we covered, with the release of the Construction Cloud, this included workflows to help support compliance with ISO 19650 standards like we've looked at. You've got new ISO 19650 workflows available on new projects as well. So this includes the project naming standard configuration, the validator, the holding area, project level attributes, approval workflow enhancements, and some more features as well that we covered. And then this allows you to streamline your project naming standard enforcement across different Autodesk tools with naming standard integrations across Autocad, Revit, and Desktop Connector. So what I'm going to do now for just the next few minutes, I will leave time in about 5 minutes for a Q&A at the end. I'm just going to jump into Autodesk Construction Cloud just to show you what it looks. I know we looked at a lot of kind of presentations there. So what I'm going to do is just jump in here. So here's a project I have set up already. Let's make sure my project is sharing this. So here's a project that we have already set up. So this is just Bim Collaborate Pro set up as an Autodesk Construction Cloud project. So we've got docs, we've got design collaboration, we've got model coordination, and we've got something called Insight. And then on your left-hand side, you've got your various different tabs. We've got files. So this is where your files are stored. This is where you can create all of your different folders. So to create a folder, for example, so I'm in project files. I want to create a subfolder of project files. And maybe I want to call this, interiors. So that's going to create a subfolder for that. I can then set the different permission levels at that particular folder. I can go into permissions and I can make sure that only the relevant people have access to that particular folder as well. So set the different permission levels. So I can choose someone for this. I have my pseudonym in here. I do select myself, Nathan, and I can just assign the different permissions there as well. So I can just give this particular person view rights, or I can give them view download, and they can also publish markups as well. So they can mark up a particular drawing that resides in there as well. But obviously, you're going to want them to upload their files in here. So you're going to want to give them access to upload files as well. So give them create permissions. You want them to produce their files, however they produce it. Maybe they're not using an Autodesk tool. Maybe they're using their own design software and just producing PDF files, or even maybe a separate 3D file format. They can then upload that into the interiors folder. They don't have access to the civils folder. They don't have access to the architecture folder. And this just means that they're not going to upload their file into the wrong location within there as well. Then within docs, we also have something called reviews. So within reviews, these are the approval workflows that I spoke about. So a review takes an approval workflow and turns it into a review essentially. So what I'm going to do here is just go into create review. So I can select project files. I can select a file. Let's say it's a CAD file, for example. I want to create that CAD file. Select an approval workflow. So I've created an approval workflow. So this goes, once it's been approved, it will then be copied into the shared area. So I'm just going to call it test review, just for example of this demonstration. I'm going to hit submit. So it's going to notify, this person is also the BIM manager on the project, this Nathan Orr guy. So I can select that, it will go to that person, notify other project members if I want. I can select somebody else if I want to also just be notified. They don't form part of the actual approval or anything like that, but it could be the client or somebody maybe senior to this person or somebody who needs to be notified that this file is being sent through a notification. So what I can then do is just, I can send that, or I can in fact skip that if I want. That will then sit in there as an approval workflow. So the next action person, they will have received an email notification, which will actually, they'll then click the link and it will bring them into this particular review. Within that review, they can then open up this, in this case, it's a CAD file. They can open up this particular CAD file. So this is a DWG format, but keep in mind that this can also be a PDF format or even a Revit 3D file as well. So more than likely, it's going to be a PDF file. I can appreciate that's how drawings are shared. So within here, we've got a couple of different options. If we've different sheets and views within that particular CAD file, we just have layout 1 and our model space set in here as well. I can set viewpoints if I want. If there are different, if you've a Revit file here, for example, all of your categories will drop down here, and you can in fact turn on and off various different categories within here as well if you only want to see your furniture or your M&E information, for example. And then we can also create something called issues as well, if we want to in here. So assigning an issue to an individual, or we can add comments to this particular file as well. So lots of different ways to integrate or to interact with your file there as well. If I had a previous file version, which I don't believe I do, I don't, I've only got V1 and V1, I could compare them in the version compare like I looked at a few moments ago as well. I can also download this particular file. And again, as I said, once I'm happy as the reviewer of this file, I can then start the review. That's fine. So it just gives you a little warning. Initial review will be assigned to you. That's fine, just because I'm the same person. If you obviously more people. So I'm happy with that. I want to submit and said, I'm just going to put in there, say approved. Hit submit. It should give me, so it's going to notify then the next person. So it's going to go from Nathan Orr to the final person. Hit send on that. So all it's doing is sending it through the different steps of being checked by different people, either internally or outside of the company. But as a part of an ISO process, you can set these particular workflows to move to the, I suppose, the assigned people that may be in your master information delivery plan as well, or workflows that will be defined in your BIM execution plan also. And I've now received an email on my phone here, and it says you've got a review assigned to you within there as well. So then the reviewer can come in and then further approve that. Once that file is approved, it will then get copied. It will then get copied into a particular folder that has been chosen to be the final folder. If that's the shared folder, for example, that file will then get copied into a particular shared folder if that's where it's been designated to go. You have other things like transmittals, which I covered. So transmittal, we can share files from here as well. So we can share files with non-Autodesk Construction Cloud users as well. It will actually send them a zip file of a set of files. And then we can create issues on different types of drawings as well. So I can create an issue and I can assign that to an individual, assign it to the BIM manager or to the document manager. Maybe I want to assign it to a project engineer. Maybe there's some sort of coordination issue that we've been made aware of, commissioning coordination issue, who I want to assign it to, give them a start and end date if I want. I can also give them until maybe next week to review this. Put today's date, I'll leave location for now empty. So that's just going to assign an issue to somebody. But what you can also do with issues is these issues can also be assigned to documents or drawings. So in this case, this particular issue, I'll go in here, open up this Revit file that's been uploaded. An issue has been assigned within this particular model as well. So if I open up issues on the left hand side, there's no issues yet visible in here. We haven't created one, but we can create an issue within here if we want. And again, we can browse all the different files within there too. So if I go back to my folder structure, so that's looking at issues. They can be assigned to 3D or 2D views or PDF views. I can open up different types of issues if I want as well, and I can navigate around those particular issues, and then I can export issues as well if I want, and I can create different types of permissions for issues, root causes, custom fields as well, and then generate reports based on all that information as well that sit within the docs environment as well. Create different types of reports, add different project members, different designers, different stakeholders within the project. And then within the settings, if you're a project administrator, you can control different types of settings in the background here as well. So that's essentially it. That, I suppose that's an overview of my demonstration or of the Autodesk Construction Cloud. And sorry, what I will say, the naming standard enforcement is found up here in the top right. I can go to naming standard. Make sure I'm happy with this enable holding area. So that's already been set on this particular project. I can go in and customize this like we looked at as well, changing the length of a particular name, setting my different codes in here as a drop-down menu so that the people involved can change this. And I appreciate that the UK National Annex has changed back in March, if that's what we're working to, and we can change the different revision formats as well for that as well. So that can be all edited and applied from within there as well. Okay, I'll leave it there for now. I will take any questions if there are any. If you want to get in contact with anyone at Diatech, please do. Our contact details. So autodesk@diatech.ie, or if you want to go to your account manager or even to diatech.ie, all of our relevant phone numbers and email addresses are available on the website there as well.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. That was a great session. The room is open for questions. You can raise your hand or type your question in the chat. Jonathan, do you want to give a quick brief about when we would have our next session, or?
Yes, I think I can't remember what we have in the calendar, but we usually run these webinars about once a month. And we usually change the topic every month. So keep an eye out on emails from Diatech or CCAD, or check back on the website as well. We'll be releasing, I suppose, updated dates for our next set of webinars as well. And all of the recordings are typically available. They're usually shared, even if you weren't able to attend. If you registered, they should have been shared as well post that. Thank you.
All right, so I think we'll end the session here. So thank you so much for everybody who attended. We'll send you an email with the recording, and please do join us on the next webinar. So thank you so much and have a great day, all of you. Thanks, Jonathan.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Ida. Bye.
Bye-bye.